Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take a stack of fascinating source material, sift through the details, and give you the essential knowledge fast. Today we are opening a time capsule straight back to the Roaring Twenties, 1925, to be precise. And the sources we're drawing from are all centered on this just massive and enduring classic of the self-help and metaphysical movements.
We are diving deep into Florence Scovel Shinn's groundbreaking work, The Game of Life and How to Play It. And, when we talk about its impact, it's almost impossible to overstate. This was a self-published book by a New York artist and lecturer that basically provided a foundational framework for nearly a century of thought on manifestation, mind science, all of it.
Okay, let's just get right to the core idea,
Yeah.
because it was radical for 1925, and honestly, it's still pretty counterintuitive today. Shinn lays out this central premise that life is not a battle, it's not a struggle, it's a game.
Exactly. And like any game, it has rules, spiritual laws. And she says they're all laid out, often using the Bible not as theology, but as a practical rule book.
A rulebook for reality.
That's the core value proposition right there.
Right.
She treats these principles as just mechanical laws, like gravity. The universe runs on cause and effect, or as she puts it, giving and receiving.
Yeah,
What you send out in thought, word, whatever, it's coming back to you.
like a perfect mirror, just reflecting your inner world back at you. And the goal, the way you win this game, is by achieving what she calls the square of life, which is, it's four corners, right? Health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression.
And what's so fascinating, especially for the time, is how practical this is. It's not abstract philosophy. It's really presented as an instruction manual, a set of non-negotiable steps for shaping your reality using your mind and your words.
Absolutely. And so for our mission today, we're going to skip the usual A to Z structure to really get how potent this stuff is and, frankly, how terrifyingly literal it can be. We're jumping straight into the deep end. We're going to start with the most shocking, sometimes treacherous examples of how people's thoughts manifested reality. Then we'll zoom back out.
Right, because it's those specific anecdotes, those almost theatrical stories that bring the philosophy to life, or as you said, sometimes bring disaster to life. It really underscores the high-stakes nature of this game.
Okay, so let's start with the imagination. The part of our brain that dreams, worries, visualizes. Shinn gives it this really dramatic name, the scissors of the mind.
Yeah, and the idea is that your imagination is constantly, day in and day out, cutting out these little pictures, and sooner or later you're going to meet those creations, those pictures, in your actual physical world.
So the universe doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you're terrified of.
Not at all. That's the crucial point. It only recognizes a clear, deep impression. So if your imagination is constantly cutting, you have to train it. You have to train it to only cut pictures of good things. Because if you let what she calls distorted imagination run wild, well, the consequences can be pretty dire.
And the first story that illustrates this it's genuinely chilling. It's about a man who developed this consuming fear of a very, very rare disease.
Right, something almost impossible to just contract casually. But what did he do? He just obsessed over it. He pictured it all the time, read every morbid detail he could find, and he allowed that mental image to get so deeply impressed on his consciousness that it manifested physically in his body. And he died from it.
Wow.
Shinn's analysis is just so sharp. She says he was simply the victim of distorted imagination. The thought, fueled by all that fear, became this powerful creative force. It didn't care about medical probability.
So the implication then isn't just that fear attracts bad things, it's that the universe has no filter. The subconscious, which is the part bringing things forth, doesn't step in and say, hey, that's irrational, I'm going to ignore that.
Exactly. It has no judgment. The subconscious is just pure power without direction. It's a servant. You feed it a picture, especially one charged with an emotion like fear, and it just says, okay, that's the command, and it gets to work.
And this next story shows just how long-lasting these commands can be. Sometimes set, decades in advance? It's the story of the woman who, as a child, would make believe she was a widow.
Yeah, and this wasn't just some fleeting thought. She really got into the role. She'd dress up in black clothes, wear a long veil, the whole 9 yards, and people thought it was sort of morbidly charming. But the subconscious, it doesn't get the joke. It doesn't entertain.
Right. It just takes the order. So she grows up, she marries a man she adores, and then very shortly after, he dies. And just as the story says, she ends up living for years wearing black and a sweeping veil, perfectly fulfilling the picture she rehearsed as a child.
And Shinn's analysis of this is maybe the most ruthless part of the book. She says that picture was impressed upon the subconscious in childhood, and in due time it worked itself out, and here's the kicker, regardless of the havoc created.
So that's the big takeaway here. The subconscious mind, the part that gets the pictures, has no sense of humor, no critical thinking.
No moral compass, it just executes. You give it a command for widowhood, it will work tirelessly to fulfill that design. Even if your conscious mind is screaming for a long, happy marriage, it's a mindless executor.
So if the imagination is the scissors cutting the blueprint, then the spoken word. That's the official decree. That formalizes the command. Shin quotes the New Testament a lot here. By your words ye are justified, and by your words ye are condemned.
The word carries a huge vibrational power. It's thought made audible. And just like with fearful images, careless words can literally build a prison around you.
And the anecdotes for this are almost more relatable, because we all say careless things, like the story of the formerly wealthy woman whose life had become one of just poverty and limitation.
Right. Shin asks her, what was your mental landscape like before this? And the woman remembers that she got so tired of managing her big house that she would say over and over, I'm sick and tired of things. I wish I lived in a trunk.
And then the penny drops. She realizes she is living in a mental trunk. Her life is confined, poor, restricted. She literally spoke herself into it. The subconscious is just recording everything.
Frighteningly, this even extends to joking. People joke themselves into unhappy situations all the time. There was a well-off woman, totally secure financially, who constantly joked about getting ready for the poorhouse. It was her running gag.
Oh, no.
And within a few years, circumstances just aligned. And she became almost completely destitute. The subconscious took her joke as a sincere directive.
That lack of a sense of humor is terrifying. It demands just absolute vigilance over what you say. But the good news is the law works both ways. The spoken word can also flip a situation from lack to abundance.
And this is where we get the powerful counterexample. The woman who comes to Shin for help with prosperity, and all she has in the world is $8. She's just discouraged, worn out, facing total collapse.
And Shin's advice is so simple, but so profound. She tells her to bless the $8 and multiply them. And don't focus on the lack, she says. Activate the power of blessing over what you have. But there was another part to it. She had to follow her intuition, her hunch.
Right. And her logical, conscious mind was screaming, stay in New York, you have to find work. But her hunch, this clear inner feeling, was to go home. To a distant, smaller city where her family was also struggling, it made no sense.
But the instruction was, never violate a hunch.
Never. So she left immediately. And Shin spoke the word for her. Infinite Spirit, open the way for great abundance for her. And when she got home, she acted on another little hunch, called an old family friend, and within days, thousands of dollars came to her in a totally unexpected way.
So it's a combination of things. It's the spoken word, the affirmation.
And the immediate obedience to that inner voice, that hunch, and acting as if the money was already there. That act of just leaving New York broke the old pattern of lack her mind was stuck in.
So the takeaway from all these examples, good and bad, is this absolute need for mental and verbal discipline. You have to use words only to seal, bless, or prosper.
And there's a huge warning, too. Whatever you say about other people, judgment, criticism, it's coming right back to you. The law ensures it. Curses, like chickens, come home to roost. You wish someone bad luck, you're just programming your own subconscious to receive it.
Okay, so now that we've seen these dramatic, almost scary results of thoughts and words, let's step back and look at the engine room, the mental structure that makes all of this work. Shin breaks the mind into 3 distinct parts.
Right. And understanding these 3 departments is essential to actually playing the game. First, you have the one we've been talking about, the engine itself, the subconscious mind. Shin calls it pure power without direction, like steam or electricity.
It's the faithful servant, the recorder. It just executes whatever command you give it, good or bad, without question.
Precisely. It's totally neutral. It doesn't care if you impress poverty or wealth. It will manifest either one with perfect, minute detail.
Okay, so then you have the conscious mind, the one we use every day. She calls it the mortal or carnal mind. And if the subconscious is the engine, the conscious mind is the faulty engineer.
That's a great way to put it. Because it only sees what appears to be real. It sees limitation, disaster, poverty, death. And here's the pitfall. It takes all those fears and impresses them onto the super powerful, non-critical subconscious, which then goes right to work, making them real.
It's the source of our self-made prisons. So if the conscious mind is the flawed filter, where does the blueprint for success come from? That must be the third part. The superconscious mind, the God mind within.
Exactly. This is the realm of perfect ideas. Shin calls it the divine design. And this design is unique to every single person. It holds the perfect blueprint for your square of life, your perfect health, your perfect partner, your perfect work.
But here's the problem she points out. That divine design usually flashes across our conscious mind as, what did she say, an unattainable ideal.
Yeah, we dismiss it as too good to be true, the daydream. But that ideal is actually your true destiny, being shown to you by the infinite intelligence within. And most people spend their lives struggling for things that aren't part of their design, which only brings failure or dissatisfaction.
Right, trying to force a square peg into a round hole. This whole concept of the divine design really explains why just using sheer willpower to get something specific can backfire. There's the story of the woman who was desperately in love with a man, she calls him AB, and was just insisting he had to be the one.
And this is where Shin shows the practical application of spiritual law over just, personal desire. She flat out refused to speak the word for this man, AB, by name, because that would be forcing an outcome. It would violate the law.
He would be using personal will to direct that subconscious engine, which could harm him or her or both.
Exactly. So instead, she offers this perfect safety net. She speaks the word only for the right man, the divine selection. The fine print was, if AB is the right man, you can't lose him. If he isn't, you'll receive his equivalent. It's just a masterpiece of non-attachment.
And what happens?
The result was almost immediate. The woman suddenly found that AB hadn't seemed so wonderful anymore. The emotional charge was gone. And then, very shortly after, she met someone new. And this new man said all the things to her she had always wished AB would say. She said the whole thing was quite uncanny.
That perfectly illustrates what she calls the law of substitution. You substitute the right, universal idea, the divine selection, for the wrong, specific, limiting one. And she gets what she really wanted without any loss or karmic debt.
And this leads right back to the teaching, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Shin's point is that the kingdom is within. It's the realm of right ideas, the divine pattern. You seek the pattern, and all the external stuff, the money, the partner, the job, just falls into place harmoniously.
So it's not a religious quest. It's a directive to mentally find and affirm your divine design, and then trust the subconscious to handle the details.
You got it. Don't micromanage the universe.
All right, so understanding the mind is the blueprint. But playing the game requires knowing the rules. Let's talk about the three big ones: faith, non-resistance, and forgiveness. Starting with the one tied to wealth, the law of active faith.
The core belief here is simple, but it's revolutionary in how you apply it. God is your unlimited supply, period. But that supply is only released through the spoken word combined with perfect active faith.
And active is the key word there. It's not passive wishing. It's a physical action you take, often in defiance of the facts. The best example is the woman facing a $3,000 lawsuit. The deadline is looming. She has no money.
Total despair. Shin immediately gives thanks that the money will arrive at the right time. But the deadline, the 15th, comes and goes. No money. The woman, understandably, is panicking.
This is where her faith is really tested. And Shin's instruction is incredible. She tells her, your job now is to act rich. You have to show perfect faith that the money has already been received on the invisible plane.
So they go to lunch, but not a cheap lunch. Shin says, this is no time to economize. Order an expensive luncheon. Think about how hard that would be. She's demanding a physical act, spending money you don't have, that goes against all common sense. That's the leap of faith becoming active faith.
So what happens? Does the money just appear on the table?
Not instantly, doesn't come Monday morning, but by the end of the day, her cousin shows up out of the blue and offers her $3,000.
Victory. But there's a catch, right?
There's a catch. He offers it for the first of the next month. She needs it tomorrow. But Shin stands her ground. She just affirms again, spirit is never too late. The next morning, the cousin calls back and says he changed his mind, he can't wait, and gives her the check right then.
Wow. So the continuous holding of the vision, plus that act of faith with the lunch, that's what paved the way.
It's all about preparation. Shin has this great analogy of digging ditches. It's from a biblical story where three kings are told to dig trenches for water, even though there's no sign of rain. You have to prepare for the thing you've asked for, even when your senses see zero evidence of it.
And this ditch digging, it's a symbolic act of expectation. Like the woman looking for a rare New York apartment during a housing shortage.
Exactly. She'd spoken the word for the perfect apartment, but her friends, the market, everything was telling her it was impossible. And then that little voice of doubt, the tempter, says, don't buy new blankets. You might not get an apartment.
But she knows the law. And she says back to herself, I'll dig my ditches by buying the blankets.
That act of faith, buying something for a home she didn't have yet, impressed her subconscious with absolute certainty. And she got an apartment miraculously within days, beating out hundreds of other applicants. The physical act sealed the deal.
Okay, let's move to the second law, which is maybe the hardest one to get your head around in our modern world. The law of non-resistance.
Yeah.
Resist not evil. My first thought is, that sounds like a recipe for getting walked all over. How does that work?
That is the common resistance to the idea, yes. Shin argues that resistance itself is hell, because it puts you in this state of inner torment, and more importantly, it means you believe in two powers, good and evil. If you believe in evil as a real power, you give it power. But if you know that God, or good, is the only power, then any negative situation is just an illusion.
So it's not about being a doormat. It's about disarming the opposition by mentally neutralizing it.
Exactly. Nothing can resist a totally non-resistant person, just like water wears away rock. If you resist a situation, a difficult boss, an annoying relative, that negative energy keeps them stuck in your life. The instruction is to agree with your adversary quickly. Agree that the situation is good, that it's for your growth, and its power over you dissolves.
That sounds like transmuting energy. So how do you apply that to an actual failure?
She calls it baptizing failure. You don't resist it, you don't complain. You take the failure and you baptize its success with the spoken word. I baptize this failure success in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost. And by doing that, you transmute it. You learn the lesson and move on.
But this takes a lot of courage, especially with deep-seated fears.
Yeah.
Like the woman who was terrified of walking under ladders.
Her fear was paralyzing, and she was told, look, if you're afraid of the ladder, you believe in two powers, God and bad luck. That violates the law. God is the only power. She was told to just walk under the next one she saw to prove her faith.
Easier said than done. She finds a huge ladder blocking the way to her safe deposit box at the bank, a place she has to go. And she turns back. She can't do it.
But then Shin's words come back to her, and she decides she has to go back and face the lion on her pathway.
Right.
This was a huge moment for her. But when she gets back to the vault, the ladder is gone. Vanished.
So the conclusion is...
Face the situation fearlessly, and there is no situation to face. It falls away of its own weight. Her fear is what attracted the ladder. Her fearlessness is what removed it. We are always pulling the strings ourselves.
Okay, that brings us to the third major law. Karma and forgiveness.
Right. The law of karma. Shin uses the Sanskrit word for comeback. It's the law of accurate return. What you give, you get. Your thoughts, words, deeds. They come back like boomerangs.
The example of this is so quick and precise. It's about Shin's friend, who is very spiritually aware. She gets irritable with her aunt at dinner and snaps, "No more talk. I wish to eat in peace."
And the very next day, she's at lunch with someone she wants to impress. And as she's talking, the woman cuts her off and says the exact same words back to her. "No more talk. I wish to eat in peace." The irritability she sent out came back to her instantly.
This law is also a huge warning against using personal will to force an outcome, like the tragic story of the woman who desperately wanted a specific house that belonged to someone else.
She made constant mental pictures of herself living there. Her desire was so strong and so specific, it manifested violently. The owner died, and she got the house. But the karmic debt was severe. Her own husband died soon after, and the house became this huge burden that brought her nothing but grief.
Because she should have demanded the divine selection for the perfect home, not that specific home. That would have ensured good for everyone.
Exactly. But, and this is a huge but, we aren't trapped in that cycle. Shin explains that Christ brought a higher law that transcends karma, the law of grace, or forgiveness. Under grace, you can rub out your mistakes.
The example for this is great. The woman who gets a counterfeit $20 bill, and before they fix it, Shin makes her analyze the cause. And she remembers she sent a friend some stage money as a joke. The impersonal law just sends some stage money back to her.
Right. So the solution was to call in the higher law. She affirmed, I am under grace and not under law. She called on the law of forgiveness. Then she just fearlessly took the bill back to the bank and they apologized and replaced it. No questions asked. Knowledge of the law of grace neutralized the karma.
Okay, so that's the framework. Now let's talk about mastery. How do you apply all this to get guidance and create that perfect pattern? And it all starts with intuition.
Shin calls intuition man's unerring guide. It's being taught from within. It's the superconscious mind talking directly to you, bypassing all the noise from the conscious reasoning mind. It just points the way.
And the challenge is trusting it. like the woman choosing between 3 jobs. 2 were safe bets in New York. 1 was a bit of a long shot down in Palm Beach. She asked for a clear lead.
And one morning she wakes up and she can literally smell Palm Beach. And Shin says, well, if you can smell Palm Beach from here, that's your lead. So she took the job based on a smell, and it was a huge success.
There's another fascinating one that connects physical and material congestion. A woman is being treated for ill health for congestion, and she gets this random hunch: take my furniture out of storage.
Right. It seems totally unrelated, but the connection was brilliant. Her physical congestion was a direct result of violating the law of use. She was hoarding all this stuff in storage, not using it, and that was causing a blockage in her body. Following the hunch cleared up both her health and her living situation.
She makes a really sharp distinction between this kind of divine guidance and things like psychics or horoscopes. Why is she so against that?
Because the psychic plane is still the mortal plane. It's the world of cause and effect, of karma. It can only tell you about your destiny under law, but you can change that destiny through grace. So why look there? You should only look to the spiritual plane, to the God within. The affirmation is, I am always under direct inspiration. That cuts off all the unreliable, lower-level data.
So once you get that guidance, you have to use the word. But we've learned you have to be so careful with the wording.
Surgically precise. We go back to the woman who demanded $1,000 and got it as an insurance payout after her daughter was hurt. The manifestation came, but it was violent. The safety phrase you have to add to every demand is, I give thanks it now manifests under grace in a perfect way.
That ensures it's harmonious for everyone involved.
Another limit people put on themselves is just low expectations, what Shin calls the need for enlarging expectancy. There was a student who asked for $600, and he got exactly $600, only to find out later that the universe was ready to give him $1,000, but his own limited consciousness stopped the flow.
Wealth is just a matter of consciousness. If you only expect a trickle, that's all you get.
And the most powerful tool for impressing big ideas on the subconscious is the affirmation, especially a rhyming one. The rhythm helps it sink in. She gives one that worked for so many of her students.
This is the famous one. I have a wonderful work and a wonderful way I give wonderful service for wonderful pay.
Yes. A businessman who'd been in a slump for months started repeating that, changing work to business. And that very afternoon, he made a $41,000 deal. The rhyme and the repetition just broke through the old consciousness of lack.
And once you make that affirmation, you have to stand your ground and make active preparation. This brings us back to that idea of a bridge of active faith.
There's a great story of a woman who needed a lot of money. She had spoken the word, but she needed to feel it was real. She sees this expensive pink enamel paper cutter in a shop window and just feels this intense pull towards it.
Her logical mind is saying you can't afford that, but her intuition pikes up.
I haven't a paper cutter good enough to open letters containing large checks. So she buys it, an extravagance. But that physical act, holding it, it gave her this flash of herself opening a big check. That paper cutter was her bridge of active faith, and the money came soon after.
Okay, finally, as powerful as all this is, Shin says the ultimate law is love.
Love is God in manifestation, the strongest magnetic force there is. But it has to be real love, which is selfless and free from fear. It just pours itself out without demanding a specific outcome.
This is really put to the test in relationships, with jealousy and loss, like the woman whose lover left her, and she was just filled with resentment and hatred.
And Shin tells her straight up, you're not loving that man, you're hating him. And that hatred is what's keeping him stuck in your life as a source of pain. The instruction was to salute the divinity in him and send him perfect, unselfish love, asked for nothing back.
It was a total mental cleanse. She just focused on her own inner peace. And Shin said when she was no longer disturbed by the situation, when she was a complete circle on her own, then he would either come back or his equivalent would show up.
And one day, she just woke up and all the suffering was gone. She had completely released him. She saw him that same evening. He asked her to marry him, and they were married within a week. The external situation changed the instant her internal state was healed.
And one last warning: the law of use, the danger of hoarding.
Money has to circulate. If you hoard it out of fear, you stop the flow. The example is the very rich woman who hoarded everything. 67 necklaces she never wore, closets full of clothes. She was violating the law of use, stagnation.
And the result was terrifyingly literal. Her arms gradually became paralyzed from holding on, and eventually other people had to manage and circulate her wealth for her. She brought about her own limitation.
She did. It's a powerful lesson.
So if we just, pull back and look at everything we've talked about, Florence Scovel Shinn has laid out this incredibly detailed, almost mechanical system for winning the game of life.
And you win by achieving that square of life: health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression. It requires constantly training your imagination, choosing your words with surgical care, and cultivating that active, unwavering faith.
And that final piece of advice for overcoming any challenge,
Yeah.
any appearance of evil. Shin reminds us that fear is just inverted faith, using the same creative engine, the subconscious, but you're just pointing it in the wrong direction.
Which brings us right back to the lion on the pathway, the thing you're afraid of. The lion gets its fierceness from your fear of it.
So the ultimate rule for mastery, for defeating that fear, is this. Walk up to the lion and he will disappear, run away, and he runs after you.
That is the ultimate test. So for you, the listener, the question becomes, what old bad records are playing in your subconscious? What untrue records, careless jokes, old fears, limiting beliefs do you need to smash and demolish? And what new perfect records of health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression, always under grace, in a perfect way, are you going to make today with your spoken word?